Osiris.
Hey there, this is Maggie Rose, recording artist and host of Salute the Songbird with Osiris Media, and I'm here to tell you about a product that I've fallen in love with. I use it out on the road, and I use it when I'm at home, and I'm talking about UpSee CBD products. UpSee is a personal wellness mission focused on curating products made from honest, pure, organic ingredients that are designed to support everyday people improve their performance and overall quality of life. Grown in Kentucky, UpSee products are non-GMO, THC-free, gluten-free, vegan, and kosher. Products range from pain relief topicals, on-the-go beverage blends, and tinctures. I personally use the Align tincture every morning to support homeostasis by helping balance mood, ease stress, and calm anxiety. Available in 500, 1,000, and 1,500 milligram in mint. I also love the beverage blend Lift. Provides clean, burning energy to power you through all of life's adventures without a crash. Each packet of our on-the-go drink mix contains 20 milligrams of pure CBD isolate, 100 milligrams of theanine and amino acid, which supports focus, and 150 milligrams of caffeine. So that definitely gets me going. Life demands a superhero. You deserve a sidekick. It is 100% organic, 0% THC, lab-tested and verified, 100% vegan, and made in the USA. Visit upsee.com and use the code Songbird at checkout to receive 30% off your order today.
It's so refreshing to talk to a woman about songs and creativity and just like to hear your perspective, that you get the nuance.
Hi, this is Maggie Rose. You're listening to Salute the Songbird on Osiris Media. Salute the Songbird is a platform for women in music to share their stories and let their voices be heard. And everyone has a seat at the table.
Think of you the most before shell or sea or sand, before salty air or suntan. Was a year ago today. You showing me the way so I would not miss a thing. Where to eat or drink or play. But because I would not be true, gotta find other things to do. California belongs to you.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Salute the Songbird. I'm your host, Maggie Rose, and this week we're talking to one of my favorite up-and-coming artist. She's been around for a long time, so it's not fair to really call her that. And you're probably hearing her voice all over your alternative and Americana radio stations. But Erin Rae is a Nashville-based singer-songwriter whose new album, Lighten Up, is so easy to listen to, but the songs she writes are about complex things. She joins me to talk about the inspiration behind the songs, like what it means to be a modern woman who gets to claim womanhood, social awareness, her experience of being Southern. We talk about the lush production on the record, which she recorded with Jonathan Wilson in Topanga Canyon, California. And you can hear the California influences, light psychedelia, the influence of the 1970s Laurel Canyon artists like Joni Mitchell. This conversation with Erin was truly like sitting down with a girlfriend in my living room, comfortable, without pretension, very neighborly, just like her. We are peers in the industry and neighbors of a sort, as we both live in Nashville, and I'm so glad to have someone like Erin as part of my community. Grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and settle into my conversation with Erin Rae, and make sure to check out her new record, Lighten Up. Listening to Lighten Up in particular, there was just some songs where I know that they came from probably a very specific place for you, but I saw exactly my situation in songs like Enemy. And I just think it's really wonderful that we're finally connecting. And especially just on the heels of this album release, which is just so exciting. Such a great post-pandemic album for me. It's helping me process a lot of the wounds that I'm still healing from that in my relationships and just like the way I look at the world. And it's just an incredibly healing piece of work. I mean, it's a bit of a sonic departure from what you've done, but in a super exciting, non-linear, but also not out of left field way. Kind of want to talk about your background a little bit, just for people getting to know you. And, I love how you kind of, in this article that Julie wrote, you say, I have been sort of met with this expectation that being originally from like a small southern town, I'm going to have an experience that's maybe more closed-minded or whatever people's preconceived notions about a small southern town upbringing would yield. But you were the only white kid in your class and learning all about the civil rights movement, and you were exposed to maybe what people would have expected to be contrary to their ideas. And like, how did you carry that experience with you, both in people's expectations of you and then also what you learned?
And I think it really, in the last few years, like since 2020 and the murder of George Floyd and just all of the like activism around that, and since then, it really brought it to my attention that like I felt very fortunate to like have this education about like the civil rights movement. We like our school celebrated Black History Month like all month long with great assemblies and speakers and friends of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., like, because Jackson's only about an hour from Memphis. And so there was just, some connections. But I would imagine, I don't know this for a fact, I'd be so interested to see it was kind of still taught as though it was in the past. I'm sure that was like as much as they could get away with. It doesn't seem that far off to think that maybe, there was like a board that was like, hey, this school is sure spending a lot of time on this subject, or like,
right.
And what are we telling these kids, and maybe there wasn't, because it was a majority Black school, maybe there was less concern about that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, basically what I took from that was kind of like still that it was like, oh, this is a huge, part of our American experience. And I still had that impression that it was in the past. And so, the last couple of years has been, just the awakening that like, it's not in the past, and there's still current repercussions. And the seed that planted is just, I feel like maybe the benefit from that was just to be able to kind of like wrap my head around the fact that there's no question about like believing Black people when they share their experience,
right,
of racism, and so that's a huge aspect of it. And yeah, and I think my own little microcosm of my family, I was super fortunate to just have really sweet parents. My dad's a total hippie, and my mom's Buddhist now. She grew up Southern Baptist but is Buddhist now, and just like it was just very inclusive. A lot of our friends and family members were gay growing up, and just we just had, it wasn't like intentionally that way. It was just I don't know, there wasn't, people could just be who they were around our family, and still like I still grew up around in the South.
I'm making candy and Korean, a friend in the mirror. I'm seeing things much clearer than before.
This album you just released with 30 Tigers in February. Also, while moving, you did this, which is insane.
It was, I have moved within this town so many times. I don't know really what it is. 7
times.
Yeah.
Once in the same building from one floor to another. Same floor plan.
Okay, great. Yeah. That makes me feel better. Truly, because I like especially on this move, I was just like, I started to feel like kind of weird about it. Like, because people notice, people are like, you really move a lot. Like,
you're nomadic.
Why are you doing that? It's so stressful to move. Why are you doing that? And I was like, well, I had a brainstorm and it seemed like this is the next right place to be. But yeah, I moved to my friend Sean's house back on the east side. I'm just renting a room in his house. I was living on my own for a year, and like in the second half of the pandemic. And I was like, I got to take a band on tour. It's probably not wise to keep spending, one bedroom rent in Nashville, apartment rent,
Totally.
It was nice. But
I've had that same motivation before in the past. And you've been here since you were 11.
Yes. We moved here in 2001 as a family. My creative self arrived here 11 years ago. I arrived with this intention. Yeah.
Well, if I'm speaking
awesome.
to that, I might have to say that my creative self arrived here like 10 years ago.
That's cool.
I was the scared puppy those first couple years.
Yes.
I learned a shit ton. I learned so much. I was blasted with knowledge, totally overwhelmed almost. I've used baptism by fire in almost every episode when I talk about my experience at first moving to Nashville, but it's because it's true. I was just like thrown in the room with some of the best writers and trying to be a sponge, but I know that it had to just be too much. I think there's like some traumatic overwhelm that I'm still processing.
Yeah, it's kind of there. It can be too much.
A lot of compassion for my younger self. I hope you feel that way too. I know that you had some self-releases before your release with Single Lock. And I know that, as trite as it sounds, that is all part of the process. And I'm really proud of the resilience that I had to show. But, I think that's kind of why, even when you're 3 albums deep, you're kind of like, feels like a new beginning.
I'm just starting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You said something in this podcast that I listened to, Songwriters on Process with Ben Opapari, speaking to the ebbs and flows of creativity or whatever we want to call it. He asked you a question about how you deal with dry spells. And I've always kind of resented that word because it feels just so heavy and daunting. But
it feels
there
like
does have to be an judgment. Ebb and flow. Or you're like, why am I not constantly prolific? And you answered it so well in a way that really comforted me, and
that's all that
made me feel like
I don't know what I said.
You said, like, I just know now that I've released 3 full-length albums what the process is, and that I use a different part of my brain in the life cycle of a record. You said, I'm paraphrasing, but it was just, it made me feel so much better. And I think anyone who's trying to like complete a really big task, like putting an album out or writing a book or any big project, you talk about like the germination of the ideas and then creating the album, recording it, even creating the songs. Like that process is very tasking. Then the rigor of touring and promoting that record is a different part of your brain. And then the kind of postpartum release of that when you go into the new phase of a new record, like how that exercises so many different parts of your creativity that you don't really look at those moments where songs aren't pouring out constantly as dry spells. You look at that as like, I'm reserving this creativity so that I can do and honor this part of the process. But you also talked about a glow, and you use that word a lot. And Ben was like, what does that mean? Because I associate that with levity and light and glowing. And you were like, it's like an orb. And I was like, yes, it's like this this summoning light.
Yeah.
It's almost like that TV in Poltergeist where the girl just like can't help but go to it.
Yeah.
Whether it's about nostalgia or heartbreak or like it's just this super present calling that I feel like if you're ready for it, that's where the inspiration strikes. And I totally get the term glow that you're using for that, because you're kind of like, I see it and it's like this beacon that's just drawing me to it, and you have to meet it.
It's kind of like intuition or something. There's like this intuitive space that like kind of opens up or something, where there's like, you know, life has been happening and then suddenly like the time comes or whatever, and you're like, okay, cool. There's like a little energetic space to like explore this. There's also like, you know, I totally get people saying like you can't always wait for inspiration or whatever like that.
Right.
I'm totally coming around to that now that, you know, the older I get, and just like, it used to just be like, wow, this is so cool. I can write a song. And then like, you know, kind of just feeling myself on that, and just, it would sort of come out more naturally. But yeah, it's like, okay, that glowy feeling can be there. And sometimes it's not there at first. And then sometimes after I've been playing guitar for like an hour, or like I play guitar one day and try around, you know, some ideas. And then the next day it comes for, you know how,
right.
Exactly how it is. Yeah.
I mean, some songs you have to work on and give them space and let it evolve. And like just the term of like this emanating light, just, you kind of don't know what it is. You figure it out. You dance around it. You physically walk around your apartment on the hardwood floors and just by yourself, and kind of have to nurture this little seedling. But I think that we can, as artists, fall into this imposter syndrome sometimes in those dry spells. And I think when I heard mind heart on Lighten Up, I felt that a lot. Just like this questioning of how can I be sure? How can I be sure? And all those things that artists ask of themselves, or just humans ask of themselves when it comes to heavy subjective matters. Like, how can you even trust your own intuition?
Maybe if he shows his face today, I will not turn away. I'll see it, and I'll say so long.
Lighten Up. You cut this in California, in Topanga, California, with Jonathan Wilson, who is probably responsible for injecting some of this psychedelia into your production, yes?
Yes, for sure. I know people have asked me like on interviews, they're like, how did you come up with these arrangements? And I was like, girl, I didn't come up with those arrangements.
I thought they were beautiful, though. I mean, your folksy country Americana feel is all over it, but he brings like a bit of a modernity to it, and definitely like a little, Cosmic Sigh was a beautiful sonic journey.
That one was a favorite. Well, you know how it is. It's like when you're making a record and a budget is what it is, and you're like, can I afford to add strings, like real strings? And I was like, if I don't do this, like I will regret it forever. And I can't believe Drew Erickson that did those arrangements. The way that Jonathan described him to me was that he was like Lawrence Welk, this old like music show that was on PBS, but it started way back. He just like drank champagne and had all these, musical guests on like 30s, 40s, and 50s. But he was like, Drew Erickson, his arrangements, that's his wheelhouse, is like this old Hollywood sound. And I was like, yeah, anyways, not to like talk about my own song, but I'm not responsible for this part. So I was like, I'm going to brag on them for a minute.
Okay, you're totally responsible for it. And I want to talk about how Jonathan and you got connected. And obviously the California Sonics are there. I mean,
Yes.
I've read all these wonderful reviews where people mention, you know, Laurel Canyon and Joni Mitchell and even Robert Plant. There's one song that has like this really cool, like after Moroccan kind of feel with like a super low cello part that I was outside gardening and I thought there were like bees around my head. And I was like, oh no, that's the song. Like it's just swirling all around me.
Whoa.
And it was, I mean, the production is super lush. It does not get in the way of the songs though, and it's not too heavy-handed for what these songs are trying to do. I think it's like you've struck a beautiful balance. So how did you guys connect, and how did you dream up this process?
Well, I met Jonathan through Mike Taylor from His Golden Messenger. I guess in 2019. I was a fan before I knew I was a fan of Jonathan's stuff, because I had listened like a number of years ago to that Jenny O record, Auto Mechanic, and he produced that like in 2011, and I was like, oh wow. When I was like, you know, doing my little Wikipedia search, kind of finding out more about him like early on, and I was like, oh my god, he did that record. And you know, of course, like the Father John Misty records, and I feel like I got most introduced to him through listening to his music, because we met through Mike at Newport. We both played a couple songs at this like after party concert thing, like at a church. It was like a chill party.
Yeah.
And so we just like, you know, connected and sort of stayed aware of each other, I guess, via Instagram, as we do these days. And yeah, he kind of just planted the seed then, like, let's make a record. And like, you know, a couple months later, and I think a couple of mutual friends here from Nashville, John Radford and Spencer Cullum, had both like worked on a project with him. Yeah, so he had like come to, I think Spencer potentially was a part of that too, and they like they flew to New York to start their tour. I don't think they got to play a show, and then the pandemic hit. But anyway, those Spencer and John told me later that they both had like recommended that we work together, and I was like, that is so nice, because I like, you know, especially at the time, have known Spencer and John, and they've just always been super sweet to me, but I wasn't that close to them, you know, so it just kind of felt like such a nod of such a validating, you know, thing
that's
to have.
Sincerity. I mean, they must have really seen the compatibility there.
Yeah. So I think, you know, it's so cool to kind of realize like after the fact, like who was connecting the dots, you know?
Yeah.
And,
what a great community to be a part of. I mean, that really is how it happens. It's not like some suits in a room like, I want to, well, it is for a lot of people, but I don't think in our world at all, it's manufactured like that. You just kind of have to follow your gut, especially when you're putting a record together during the time that you were assembling it.
By the time it came out, it had been almost 4 years since my last record. And, you know, I knew it was going to take some time to put it out in the world, and with the vinyl and it, you know, just distribution.
I had finished Have a Seat before when the pandemic began in 2020, and I sort of turned my back on the record for a couple months, not because I didn't absolutely love it, but because it was just so painful to think that like all of this work that felt so topical, which it was, but actually ended up becoming more so. And this is a really perfect time for you to put this album out, which is why I don't think it's timeless, but it does really feel like a wonderful answer to us pretty much having gotten through this.
Yeah.
So many themes that I love about social awareness, like gender identity, modern woman. I want to talk about that because I feel like it's the best accompaniment to this podcast. And I love the video.
Thanks.
You know, Enemy was one that I thought of with relationships. And
yeah, thanks for mentioning that song. I feel like that one's very dear to me. That was one of the first ones that started the writing process for this batch of songs a couple of years ago. Yeah, I was like, you know, experiencing the germination period / block.
Yeah.
You know? And a friend of mine was like, let's just write an idea every day. We'll send it to each other like via voice memo. And if it's not, it doesn't have to be done. It doesn't have to be good, or like, it's just about opening the stream of consciousness or whatever. And that's like kind of what came out at that time. But it's you know, it's very personal, like the subject matter. It's just talking about jealousy and like, you know, how kind of just like self-centered fear, and how that can color my perception of like someone who's a friend to me, you know, and that's like, you know, it's a heavy song. And so even though it's like one of my favorite ones to sing, like guitar wise, melodically, and I love that we ended up kind of putting Jonathan like had like a backbeat, like slightly country feel to that song. I don't know. It's one of my favorites, but I also hesitate to play it.
It's super complex. Yeah. I had to listen to it a few times just to, I mean, you're owning up to so much in that, but it also feels like you're the victim of that same behavior. And you're just able to articulate it in a way that I haven't heard anybody do yet. And it also kind of ties into this whole social media world of like, you know, the
like compare
perceptions we're casting. Yeah, compare and despair. And like how that just strangles creativity. It strangles our grasp on reality, I think, and like who people really are relative to us in our life and how we are to them. And I just think it's an incredibly nuanced song that you can just kind of do a whole thesis on it, really, if you wanted to, when you draw on our experiences from the last couple of years.
Hey listeners, we want to tell you about a podcast from Realm called The Co-Founder. In this snarky and hilarious show, Valerie and Juliet are more than just best friends. They're business partners in the cutthroat world of Silicon Valley, where their video game startup is on the verge of failure. They're exhausted. Between running out of capital and being treated like dirt during their fundraising meetings with big deal finance bros, they need a win or it's game over. They're on the brink of losing their company, but it's a fate they narrowly avoid thanks to a harebrained scheme to have their neighborhood barista, a white dude of course, pretend to be the third founder in order to raise money. But when the barista reveals he has a scheme of his own to keep the company in his clutches, hijinks and hilarity ensue. The Co-Founder is a Realm production starring Sunita Mani and Alexandra Shipp. Learn more about The Co-Founder at realm.fm and listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying my conversation with the amazing Erin Rae. It might come as a surprise, but we have lots of mutual friends. We've worked with a lot of the same people. We've crossed paths a few times. We've never hung out in a meaningful, intimate way. And as you can see, we're like long lost sisters. She's just so easy to talk to, so easy to be around. And I think that that's a testament to her character and how she's even approached her career. She comes from a family of musicians, but she was gifted this Martin guitar as a young girl, and she just kind of answered the call, which I'm so glad that she did. And I'm wondering if any of you out there have a little subtle calling that you might be ignoring, and if you're going to answer it or not, if it suits you. And I've been hearing her song, Modern Woman, on the radio so much lately, which makes me very happy. She deserves all the attention and accolades coming her way, but it's so pertinent to what's going on today with women's rights and also with a little bit of the identity crisis that a lot of us are experiencing today in society. So how can you widen your embrace of people around you? How can you deepen your empathy for those around you? And what do you consider to be a modern woman? I'd be very interested to know. But let's tuck back into this conversation with the very warm and welcoming Erin Rae. One song that I totally loved, and speaking of visuals, was the song featuring your buddy Kevin Morby, Can't See Stars. And it's like, you guys are just so cute, and I love how it's shot. But it's all this scenery in Memphis, and you go to Sun Studios, and you're outside the arcade restaurant, and like you're kind of doing this two-step. Yeah. And you guys are just sort of like, I don't know, it looks like you kind of just maybe like smoked some weed and started walking around and singing your song. Yeah. I love that too. Like, it just, the visuals paired with the sonics is super fun. And there's a playfulness to it too. So it's not like, there's so much joy on this record. There's depth. There's like definitely an old soul observer kind of perspective that you have too, but it's fun also. Thank you. That and Modern Woman video we have to talk about. It means a lot to me. It's killer.
I feel like it's so refreshing to talk to a woman about songs and creativity, and just like to hear your perspective, that you get the nuance of like that it can be. It's like, of course, on first listen for like, you know, a mainstream audience, the general public, you know, not everybody wants to dive in to like the emotionality. I totally get it. You know, respect for the internal boundaries, and just like if you want music to just be like a release and not a place that like takes you into like emotional exploration, totally get it. And like Bird Cloud, their slogan was not for everyone, which I always loved.
I love them.
But
they're so funny.
Yes, so hilarious. Yeah, but I'm just like, it's so nice because I don't know, no shade on any interviewers or whatever, but just with a male perception sometimes, and maybe just a person, I don't know, who knows how, you know, sexist it is. It might just be like a person to person thing, but it's very refreshing, and I really appreciate that, because it's like, I think sometimes it can be like, wow, like, yeah, your songs are really slow.
Oh God.
You know,
they did the least.
It's like, man,
cut that interview.
Yeah, you were
off.
talking about a lot. Do you feel happy? You know, that kind of thing. I'm like,
God.
You know, anyways, I know you probably have had your fair share of stories over the years.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Like horrifying stories where I just like, I don't even know. Like, we don't ever get to the music. And I know that like it's in other genres, it's especially bad. And in certain settings, it's like, oh, we're just here to play like a trivia game. Yeah. And like have little like sound effects, like in Parks and Rec when they're at the radio station. It's just like, woo! And like all these like woo-ga sound effects, and they don't talk about anything of substance.
Well, I ain't seen stars in a million moons 'cause of that light pollution. They think of a solution. I hope they let us know. So I drive out to that further place where there are no interruptions. Just me alone, just me beneath an old familiar glow. Can't see stars.
You have hardcore fans. And
That
like,
is so nice.
I know that you're like, oh, it's, you dive in and you look at these songs, but like, I'm reading some of these comments from your 2019 NPR Tiny Desk concert. And one woman said, I listened to this with my daughter. If it's one of the things she remembers me for, I'll be happy.
Oh my gosh. I have not read those.
Yeah, like you're so humble. So I thought this might be a fun little exercise for you to just hear some of these comments and maybe respond to them.
That's really wonderful.
But like, I don't know what that story is, but I saw that and I was like, okay, what happened to that woman? And I'm sure that her daughter is probably like a lifelong fan of yours. Reminds me of Tom Petty's songwriting, so incredibly calming. This song, Love Like Before, was on repeat in my car, filled with suitcases and boxes of my junk while driving across country after a breakup. I ended up finding my own place on the east side in my hometown, and I felt grounded in the moment and where I happened to be living for the first time in years.
Oh my gosh. Thank you
people
so much
are
for
diving
reading these.
in. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm with you. Like, I love candy and I love a whole meal, but sometimes like takes time to really sit down and get the fork and knife and dig in. And your music is certainly worth doing that with.
Thanks, Maggie.
But again, you know, I love chocolate and a little ditty here. Not everything has to be so serious. And I don't think
Dippin' Dots.
Yeah. I don't think that you are taking it all so seriously. I think you just are very candid with how you're working through your observations, and you put them into words that are only you can do it that way, which is pretty awesome.
The cosmic sigh she breathes, something shifts beneath her wings. The winds of change are blowing, and heard on high what sings.
Modern Woman. You are, so that's another great music video. It is directed by Joshua Shoemaker.
Yep.
Joshua Shoemaker. And I recognize Brittany Howard in there.
Yes.
Give me a shout out to all these other women who are in the video and kind of talk about that concept, because it's great.
Yeah. I don't want to miss anyone's name, but so many friends in town and it was like we kind of pulled from both Joshua and I's friend groups, and there was some overlap, and then some people that I got introduced to, like Emerson Kyle, who is a wonderful photographer in town that Joshua knew, and Tiffany Minton, Brittany's partner. Tiffany is a drummer, activist, historian. You might have met her at the Bell Court over the years. Yeah, Tristan, who is a musician and owns Anaconda Vintage.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And a mom. She's a mama. And Michaela Ann, also a musician. And Pam and Lee, who own Fanny's music store.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was really, I don't know. I loved how theirs turned out in the room of guitars. But yeah, my friend Matt Lovell, my friend Emily Young, who's a DJ at WXNA. Yes, the list goes on. Diana, who is a part owner of
The Beehive.
Beehive. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's good food.
Yeah, and Ellie, who is a visual artist. She was in the green stripe dress at the end. And it started because, as I was writing that song, I just started to get this image of my friend Matt. Always sends me these hilarious videos of him in wigs doing different characters and stuff. But also sends me really beautiful photos of himself, like just expressing himself in through clothes and fashion and heels. And when I wrote like Might Be a Vision in a Satin Dress, like I had him in mind. And so I was like, would you be in my video? Would you feel comfortable with that? It's just about, and he was like, he was totally down. And he just looks so like strong in himself.
Regal. Yeah.
Yeah. Regal.
I loved
so
it.
Regal. So yeah, it just kind of, I wanted it to be like a moving painting kind of thing of just like, little just snapshots of these different women in their element, in things that kind of bring out who they are.
Well, and your lyrics totally speak for themselves and support the whole concept of just redefining, who gets to claim womanhood, and what our idea of that is. And I think that is something that's so important. I feel like the discussion around this podcast, even in particular, some people are like, well, why do you only interview women? I'm like, I interview people who are having that experience in the industry.
Yeah.
Because it does matter. It does.
Yes.
And it matters because we have to talk about things like that during Women's History Month. Like, my whole thing is, we should have a month to celebrate all the nuance in which women can be defined. And it's just a great visual representation of it, accompanied by just an awesome song that's fun and upbeat, and it's palatable for anyone to hear. You're not calling anyone out either. You're just kind of like, let's round up. What is the lyric of the chorus? The first lyric of the chorus?
Round up the old perceptions, lay them on down.
Like, it's okay to expand our understanding of it.
Yeah.
And it was beautifully shot. And I love that you featured all these Nashville women.
Round up the old perceptions, lay them on down. They're only telling stories and they're getting away right now. 'Cause you can't see the future, you can't change the past. Come see a modern woman.
The headlining opportunity and touring, like, you should be totally, like, the fear is understandable, and that like harness that and like sink your teeth
it's like
into
a little
it.
there's some power in that,
Oh my
it's like
god, it's terrifying and it's awesome.
there's like, it's like this energy that I don't know. My mom is a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And she has been recently certified in this mode of like processing trauma, and just, it's not even all for like big T traumas, but just processing feelings. And it's kind of in line, it goes hand in hand with like somatic work, which is like how you experience feelings in the body.
Yeah, it's almost like the kind of tapping thing on your shoulders.
Yes.
And I think that that's something that not a lot of people are super proficient in. That's pretty cool. Are you working with her?
Well, she connected me when I was in Australia, actually, to this specialist that does this brain spotting stuff, which, not to go into it too much, because I also don't really know how to explain it, but it uses, like, when you're talking about something and an emotion comes up, and a strong emotion, your eyes, I guess, will go to a natural place. And if you keep your eyes there and like start to pay attention to how it feels in the body and like allow it to process and like let it expand and all this. So like, this is all a roundabout way of saying, like, I had this experience of like, having the little feeling of fear about a situation, and it being feeling very just like constricted and like, where you're like tightened up around it and you're like, I'm so afraid of this, whatever it is. And, the the person I was seeing, she was like, okay, like imagine that feeling, giving that feeling space to like expand all the way through your body, like to every cell. What's the difference? It's like, oh, actually it's pretty energizing. Like I'm not afraid of it when I'm not trying to like control it and keep it, Right. And obviously like, yeah, I don't know, not to go too into that, but just like that kind of thing has been it's a very recent kind of game changer of like, oh, like that sometimes those little feelings like present in a certain way at first, but then they have so much more to offer, like as like a power source, or just like that's not the full picture. Like it's like the tip of the iceberg or whatever, but
that makes so much sense. You can apply that same kind of thinking to songwriting or creativity. You have just one little spark that will present itself in a multitude of ways, and you can ignite it if you kind of know how to control it. And do you get asked this a lot where like people are like, do you get nervous before you go on stage? And you're like, of course I do.
Yes. Yeah.
Because like I'm not disassociating. Like, I'm nervous. And I think that there's a reason that like our physiology does that to us. It's because it is some form of energy that we are meant to channel in a way that will make you perform over the top for the next 90 minutes or whatever. Like a headlining show, you're going to be playing longer. You're the end of the evening. Like people are coming to see
the main event.
And like the good news is your audience is biased. They're probably bought into Erin Rae already at your headlining shows, but like this is your chance to show up for them and prove to them why they're fans of yours. Last question that I ask everybody, and you've already answered it in so many ways, but best part about being a woman in the industry?
Just like the community of other women and connecting and having the, just the shared experience, and how there's like an understanding. Anybody that's been around for a few years, gets it. And it's just like such a, like, it's so cool.
Well, you are part of a community for sure, and supported not by just your fellow female peers in the industry, but by so many, and so exciting to watch you. I'm going to listen to this album many, many times until I see you again.
Thanks, Maggie.
And
thank you.
Best of luck on this tour and this new chapter. I'm so excited for you.
Thanks so much.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Erin. You can keep up with her on our socials at Erin Rae Music. And of course, make sure to give her new album, Lighten Up, a listen. And to keep up with me, my music, and my touring calendar, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at I Am Maggie Rose. Check out my touring schedule on www.maggierosemusic.com. And make sure to join my With the Band family, where you can get exclusive Salute the Songbird content, live stream concerts, and more. Salute the Songbird is brought to you by Osiris Media, hosted by Maggie Rose, produced by Austin Marshall, Maggie Rose, and Kirsten Cluthy, with production assistance from Grace Romer and Kippy Young. Edited by Matt Dwyer. Music by Maggie Rose. Show logo by Premier Music Group. Graphics by Catherine Boyles and Mark Dowd. Please subscribe to Salute the Songbird on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast content. And if you like the show, recommend it to a friend or leave us a review so that others can join the conversation. Thanks for listening, and to close out the show, here's Modern Woman from Erin's new album, Lighten Up.
That was a lie.
Hey, it's RJ from Osiris. I want to tell you about our Osiris Live event at Ardmore Music Hall right outside of Philly on Monday, July 18th. It will feature Tom Hamilton, Chris Forsyth, and Daniel Donato, three great guitarists. I'll be interviewing each of them on stage, and then they'll each play some music with our house band, which is made up of Andy Cush of Garcia Peoples, Ryan Jewell, and Ron Stabinsky of the Meat Puppets. At the end, there will be an awesome super jam featuring all the musicians. We're so excited about this, and if you're coming to Philly for the Fish shows at the Man, or if you live in the area, or if you just want to check out this show, it'll be a wonderful night of music and conversation, and we'd love to see you. Check out osirispod.com/OsirisLive to learn more.
Osiris.